Have you ever met someone who just seemed cold-hearted? The simple pleasures in life don't bring these people joy anymore. The tenderness of children and new life are seen as annoyances rather than blessings. The friendly gesture of a stranger or even a friend is met with suspicion. When a man goes through heartache, heartbreak, disappointment, failure, betrayal, and loss, he will generally deal with it by turning inward. Most men are more naturally stoic, and stoicism is a good trait to have so long as your insides are not being corrupted. It's all about how you spiritually process the tragedy that has befallen you. That can shape you into the archetypal wise man or into the archetypal bitter man. Both of these archetypes can seem to employ traits of stoicism, but there is a large difference between the two. The bitter man's heart is full of contempt, seeking vengeance. Behind every smile, he only sees the duplicity of humans. He remembers back to fond memories that ended with a stab in the back, and he bristles with disgust. Disgust for himself that he could be so stupid, and disgust in how he was treated. The bitter man is consumed by the weight of sin. The wise old man archetype is the antidote to the bitter man. This is the character that, despite having massive tragedy, failure, or injustice in his life, still holds firmly to the spark of humanity that lives in every single person. He emulates Christ in his wisdom, in his character, and in his grace. Think of Abbe Faria. He was the priest that was imprisoned with Dantes in the classic novel The Count of Monte Cristo. When Dantes meets Abbe, he's been imprisoned for years. He's completely lost faith in God and supreme justice, being the victim of a completely unjust prison sentence. Dante's heart is full of vengeance and hate. Now when Abbe and Dantes begin to interact, Abbe begins teaching Dantes in every aspect of life. He teaches him literature, math, science, fencing. He also teaches him about hope and the eternal hope in God. Of course, at first, Dantes is completely unreceptive to what Abbe has to say. This interaction summarizes Dante's initial attitude and the wisdom of Abbe. Abbe Faria, here's your final lesson. Do not commit the crime for which you now serve the sentence. God said, "Vengeance is mine." Dantes, I don't believe in God. Abbe Faria, it doesn't matter, he believes in you. Abbe continues to explain to Dantes how even in complete deprivation and misfortune, the soul can live and find meaning and purpose. Abbe Faria, misfortune is needed to plumb certain mysterious depths in understanding of men. Pressure is needed to explode the charge. My captivity concentrated all of my faculties on a single point. They had previously been dispersed. Now they clashed in a narrow space. And, as you know, the clash of clouds produces electricity. Electricity produces lightning, and lightning gives light. In this classic story, the great misfortune and injustice that was done to Dantes puts him on the path to becoming the bitter man. Despite the fact that Dantes was loved, respected, admired by those around him, and despite the fact that he had high moral character and integrity, he was still on his way to internalize the injustice done to him and to let it corrupt him. As the story progressed, Dantes follows this path of vengeance despite the teachings of Abbe. Story unfolds and demonstrates how revenge taken into your own hands not only destroys your enemies, but you as well. While the book and the movie have different endings, the theme is that even masterfully executed revenge will ultimately destroy you. And this quote from Abbe exemplifies this. I regret now, said he, having helped you in your late inquiries, or having given you the information I did. Why so? Inquired Dantes. Because it has instilled a new passion in your heart, and that of vengeance. Now, most bitter men in today's society do not have the sort of epic tale that the Count of Monte Cristo describes. Rather, they have dozens or hundreds of these interactions with society and the people around them that slowly begin to deaden their heart and extinguish the spark from their soul. They live lives of quiet desperation, and their revenge is not acted on, but only passively enjoyed as they take pleasure in the struggle of other people. Their cowardice for real vengeance is misplaced by a twist version of joy in watching others suffer. And these quotes from novels and films exemplify this attitude. I used to believe in good people, and then I grew up. Love is just a pretty word for the mess it leaves behind. I've seen enough to know that the world has more thorns than roses. I've walked enough paths to know that they lead to all the same destination, nowhere. These quotes capture the essence of bitterness, disillusionment, and cynicism that often define the archetype of the bitter man character in literature and life. Every man will go through varying degrees of tragedy, heartache, and hardship. Literature and film typically shows us the extremes a person can go through and retain his soul, but the slow grinding mediocrity of life can have just as devastating an effect on the psyche and soul of a man. How then are we to counter the crushing weight of desperation and resentment? How is a man to avoid becoming the bitter man? He must look at himself as an instrument of usefulness. While a woman's power lies in her gentleness, care, and nurturing, a man's power lies in his usefulness to those around him. If a man finds very few people around him, his goal should always be to be maximally useful to those nearby. The bitter man will slowly disengage and pull away, while the wise old man will gladly share with those that hear. The bitter man will tell himself stories of deceit and corruption, while the wise old man will tell tales of redemption. And Christ said, "Pray for those that persecute you, for he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and sends rain on the just and unjust alike." And Christ said, "If you hold anything against anyone, forgive them, so that your Father in heaven may forgive you of your sins."